I always believed every family has an anchor, something that keeps them steady when the tides shift and life threatens to pull them under. For us, that anchor was a 1969 Mustang Fastback, rusted, dented, more scrap than steel when we first dragged it home on a rainy afternoon 2 decades ago. Yet my husband, Daniel, looked at it the way most men look at newborns, full of hope and stubborn determination. This one, he told me, wiping grease from his hands, is going to outlive us both. Back then, I laughed. I thought he was simply being sentimental, the way men get when they're finally old enough to want projects more than adventures. But he meant it. For 20 years, piece by piece, bolt by bolt, Daniel rebuilt that car. Sometimes I teased him that he spent more time under the Mustang than in our bed. He always grinned and said, "Well, sweetheart, this one listens better." It became his sanctuary, and in some strange way, mine too. After he retired, after his health failed, after the doctors started speaking in low, careful voices, as if kindness could soften fate, he still went to the garage. Even on days when his hands shook too much to hold a wrench, he'd sit beside the Mustang, like an old friend keeping vigil with another. When he died, the house fell unbearably silent. But the garage still felt like him. The faint smell of motor oil, the way the radio was always tuned to his favorite oldies station. The folded shop rags he kept in perfect stacks. It was the last place I could breathe without feeling the full weight of grief crushing my chest. The car wasn't finished when he passed, not completely, but it was close enough that I could see what he envisioned, the shine, the curves, the possibilities. So I left it exactly as he did, not because I planned to drive it, but because touching it felt like touching his memory. For years it stayed that way, untouched, sacred. Then Andrew married Vanessa. I tried, God knows I tried, to welcome her. She was beautiful, polished, and charming in that way people become after practicing their smiles in the mirror. From the moment she stepped into our home, I felt a stiffness in the air, like the walls themselves braced for impact. Andrew changed around her. My gentle, thoughtful son became someone sharper, someone who measured everything in money, image, and convenience. Vanessa didn't mean to be cruel. I believe that. She simply existed in a world where the value of a thing was determined by how many people envied it. She hated the Mustang. "It's outdated," she said once, flipping her perfect hair over her shoulder. "Why don't you just sell it and use the money for something practical? Or at least something modern?" Andrew laughed, but it wasn't the laugh I raised him to have. It was thin, apprehensive, a man caught between love and shame. My heart pricked at that moment, a tiny warning that something in my family had begun to shift. I brushed it aside. You ignore the first crack in a vase because you want to believe it will hold. Years passed. Vanessa kept asking. Andrew kept avoiding the conversation. I kept the garage door locked. What I never told either of them, what I never told anyone, was that Daniel once whispered to me during one of his last lucid days, "Be careful with that car, love. It might be worth more than people realize someday." I thought he meant money. Or sentiment. I didn't yet understand the weight in his voice. I didn't understand that the car wasn't the only thing he had been building. He had been building a secret. One meant for me alone. The morning the Mustang disappeared didn't begin dramatically. There were no storms, no omens, no strange feelings tugging at my senses. It was an ordinary Tuesday, quiet, a little gray, the kind of morning where the world seems half asleep. I went to the garage as I always did. Sometimes I didn't even know why. Habit, grief, maybe a desperate desire to feel Daniel's presence in the air, like a lingering whisper. I carried a cup of tea in one hand, pushing open the door with the other. But instead of being greeted by the soft gleam of the Mustang's chrome bumper, I was met with emptiness. A hollow, gaping, impossible emptiness. The tea slipped from my hand and shattered on the concrete, but I barely heard it. I stood frozen, staring at the vacant space where the car had rested faithfully for years, like a missing tooth exposing the vulnerable hollow beneath. My heart thudded wildly, confused and terrified. Someone had been here. Someone had touched what was sacred. I stumbled forward, palms touching the cold floor, as if I expected some trace of the Mustang to remain. Heat, tread marks, something. But the space was spotless. Deliberately so. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. I called Andrew first, not because I suspected him, but because a mother's instinct clings to her child for answers when the world suddenly falls apart. He answered on the third ring. "Yeah, Mom." I sucked in a trembling breath. "Andrew, the Mustang. It's gone. Someone stole it. Did you come by last night? Did you move it? For a second silence. A silence that should have warned me. Then, too casually, he said, "Oh, yeah, I took it." I felt my pulse stutter. "You took it? Why? Andrew, what are you talking about?" "I sold it." The words hit like a physical blow. Air left my lungs. My body went cold. "Sold it," I whispered. "You sold your father's car." He exhaled in irritation, as if I were the unreasonable one. "It's just a car, Mom. Vanessa found a buyer who was willing to pay a lot, and she's been wanting to go to Paris for our anniversary. This helps both of us. Honestly, you should be thanking me." Thanking him for erasing 20 years of Daniel's labor, for carving out the last remaining piece of him from my life, for doing it behind my back like a thief. "Andrew," I said, barely able to form words, "that car was your father's heart. He poured everything into it. Everything. You had no right to sell it." "Oh my God, Mom, stop being dramatic," his tone sharpened. "Vanessa said you'd be like this. It's metal. It's an old car. Just let it go. Let it go." I sank onto the garage steps, one hand pressed to my chest to hold myself together. Something inside me cracked. Something maternal and ancient that no mother ever wants to feel. "How much did you sell it for?" I asked quietly. "Nof," he said. "We already booked the Paris tickets. So please don't make this a big deal." A sob clawed at my throat. "You stole from me." "Oh, here we go. You stole from me?" I screamed louder than I knew I could. "You stole your father's legacy. You stole the last piece of him I had." He hung up, just like that, as if I were nothing. I don't know how long I sat there, cradling my face in shaking hands. Long enough for the daylight to change. Long enough for grief to congeal into something heavier, betrayal. Then, as if the universe itself wasn't finished with me, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something, a flicker, an instinct, made me answer. "Hello," a warm, steady voice replied. "My name is Harold. I'm calling from Weston Classic Autos. We just purchased a 1969 Mustang Fastback from a young man. And I believe you may be the true owner." My breath froze. I whispered. "There's something you need to see," he said, his voice tightening. "Something your husband left inside the vehicle. I think he meant it for you." I clutched the phone tighter. "What did he leave?" "Mom," he said gently. "I can't explain it over the phone. But please, come as soon as you can." I stood up slowly, my body trembling, my heart pounding with a new fear and a strange, fragile hope. Daniel had left something behind. And whatever it was, it waited for me now. I drove to the dealership in a haze, half numb, half terrified. The world outside the windshield blurred into streaks of gray. My hands trembled so badly on the steering wheel that I had to pull over twice just to steady my breathing. Grief makes you fragile. Betrayal makes you hollow. But uncertainty is the sharpest of them all. What had Daniel left for me? Why had he hidden it in the car? And how long had it been waiting in silence? When I arrived, a man in his early 60s was standing outside the glass doors, pacing with a purposeful gentleness. As soon as he spotted me, he walked forward with a kind of respectful urgency. "You must be Mrs. Hale," he said. "I'm Harold." I nodded, unable to shape a coherent greeting. He extended his hand, but after seeing the tremor in mine, he lowered it respectfully. "Come," he said softly. "The car's inside." The dealership smelled faintly of wax and warm metal. Rows of polished classics lined the showroom, each gleaming like a frozen piece of history. But among them all, my eyes went straight to the Mustang. Daniel's Mustang. Harold had parked it under a halo of white lights, as though he knew it deserved reverence. My breath hitched. I walked up to the car, my fingers brushing the curve of its fender. Even after all these years, it felt like Daniel, strong, steady, patient. "I'm sorry for the condition we received it in," Harold said gently. That young man seemed rushed. Young man, my son. My betrayer. But I couldn't think of Andrew now, not with Daniel's presence humming through the metal beneath my fingertips. "We noticed something unusual," Harold continued. "My mechanic thought it was rust damage at first. But then he found this." He crouched beside the passenger side and lifted the carpet with a deliberate tenderness, almost as if he were unveiling a wound. I knelt beside him. There, built seamlessly into the floorboard, was a thin, nearly invisible seam, something only a trained eye or a devoted husband might notice. Harold pried it open with a small tool, and a rectangular metal box emerged from the cavity, dusty but intact. It was old. Older than the disease, older than the fear, older than all the things we lost. My name was etched into the lid, not painted, not labeled, engraved. My breath shattered. "You can open it here," Harold said quietly. "Or somewhere private." "Here," I whispered. My fingers struggled with the tiny key Harold handed me, the one taped beneath the box when they discovered it. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. When the lock clicked open, it echoed like a gunshot in the silent showroom. Inside lay a small stack of envelopes, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. Under them sat a bundle of photographs. Polaroids from our first years of marriage, grease-stained snapshots of Daniel working under the Mustang, even silly pictures of Andrew as a child pretending to fix his toy cars just like his father. Then, at the very bottom, a thick, sealed envelope addressed in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting. "For my love. If you ever need it." My throat tightened painfully. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a notarized declaration naming me the sole and irrevocable owner of the Mustang. Daniel's signature was shaky but proud. The notarization date was only 3 months before he died. The second document made my heart stop. It wasn't a title transfer, it was the original title. Blank, unsigned, untouched. Daniel had never completed the restoration legally. Not because he ran out of time, but because he wanted the car protected from anyone who might ever try to claim it. Protected from our own son. My vision blurred. "He meant for you to find this," Harold murmured. "He built that compartment himself. Whoever buys cars like these knows craftsmanship. That heady out, it was done by someone who loved what he was protecting." He loved me. Even when he knew he might not be here to defend me. I pressed the papers to my chest, feeling grief and gratitude collide inside me like a storm. Daniel had seen the future, and he had left me the strength to face it. Not in money, not in possessions, but in truth. A truth that gave me back the one thing betrayal tried to steal: power. Driving home from the dealership, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. Grief had muddied my world for so long that I'd forgotten what it was like to breathe without the weight of loss pressing against my ribs. But holding Daniel's documents, feeling the warmth of his handwriting through the envelope, something inside me settled. I wasn't powerless. Daniel had made sure of that. The next morning, I returned to the dealership to finalize the paperwork. Harold greeted me with a respectful nod, already holding a folder. "We've voided the sale," he said. "Your son didn't have legal authority. The car is yours again." I nodded, my throat tight. "Thank you. There's one more thing," he added gently. "We're willing to cover the legal fees if your son tries to contest the reversal. We see a lot of messy family disputes around classic cars." He paused. "But rarely do we see one where the original owner loved someone enough to plan this far ahead." I swallowed the lump in my throat. Daniel always planned ahead. That afternoon, I drove the Mustang home, slowly, cautiously, reverently. The engine rumbled like it recognized me, like it forgave me for letting it go even for a moment. I parked it in the garage, locked the door, and then locked it again just to steady my heart. I had reclaimed my husband's legacy. But I hadn't yet faced the person who tried to steal it. The call came that evening, Andrew, frantic. "Mom," the dealership canceled the payment. He snapped the moment I answered. "The bank froze the funds. They're threatening fraud charges. Fix it." His entitlement hit me like a slap. But for the first time, I didn't cower. I didn't soften. I didn't mother him. "No," I said calmly. "What do you mean no?" His voice cracked with panic. "Vanessa is furious," she said, "if we can't go to Paris." "You mean she wanted the money?" I interrupted. "You sold something that didn't belong to you to fund her vacation." He inhaled sharply. "I was trying to make her happy. And in doing so," I said, voice steady as steel, "you broke my heart." Silence, a long agonizing silence. He tried again, quieter this time. "Mom, what do you want me to do?" I exhaled, slow and deliberate. "First, you will pay every cent you owe the dealership, every penalty, every fee. This is your mess. You will fix it. And then," he whispered. "Then," I said, "you will go to counseling. Real counseling. Not one session, not a token effort. You need help, Andrew. You need to understand why you chose greed over your family." He didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just sat there in silence, breathing shakily. "Mom," he said eventually. Are you going to cut me off?" I closed my eyes. "That depends on you. If you ever try to take something from me again, it won't be the car you lose, it will be me." He cried then. Not angry tears. heartbroken ones. The boy he used to be flickered through the phone line, and for a moment, I remembered the child who used to curl into Daniel's lap while he worked in the garage. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I know," I whispered. "No, prove it." Vanessa left him 2 weeks later. Predictably, she blamed me. Then she blamed him. Then she blamed Paris for being too expensive, as if a city could be at fault for her greed. Andrew moved into a small apartment, started paying off the debt, started therapy. Slowly, painfully, he began to rebuild, not just his finances, but his conscience. As for me, I rebuilt the Mustang, not because it needed it, but because I did. On weekends, I polished the chrome the way Daniel taught me. I replaced the old leather seats with new ones, stitched by hand. I buffed the paint until it gleamed like a promise reborn. The first time I turned the key, the engine roared awake, strong, alive, defiant. It felt like Daniel was there beside me, resting one warm hand on mine. "I've got it from here," I whispered into the hum of the motor. And for the first time since he died, I meant it. This wasn't vengeance made of anger. It was the kind made of reclamation, honesty, and boundaries long overdue. It was the sweet revenge of becoming whole again,